welcome to the Whisky Sisters podcast. I am Inka Larissa.
And I am Jennifer Rose.
Together, we will be bringing you a weekly whiskey podcast where we'll be discovering drams, exploring distilleries, talking to industry experts, and sharing other whiskey adventures.
Not only will we be sticking our noses into our drams, but also into all things new and current in the whisky universe, with a leading commentary, of course.
You're listening to Whisky Sisters, the podcast.
Happy International Women's Day!
Happy International Women's Day to you and to all the ladies of the cosmos.
So today we are talking about Welsh whisky, which is a growing whisky market. As our knowledge of the category is pretty limited, let's just be honest there, we don't know.
We know nothing.
Yeah.
Ignorance.
Ignorance. So we have a special guest joining us later on to give us all the intel. We're also sampling 3 Welsh whiskies today. Very exciting.
Indeed. And as it's International Women's Day on the release of this episode, we wanted to catch up with Leigha Kingsely, who some of our listeners may be familiar with from a previous episode. We want to see how she's getting on with the Spirit of Women documentary. So before we stick our noses into those whisky glasses, let's stick our noses into the latest whisky news.
Stick your nose in it.
Thank you so much for having me back on your show. My name is Leigha Kingsely, and I'm an actress, writer, producer, and director in Los Angeles, but I grew up in Kentucky where 95% of the world's bourbon is made. And I started developing this film because I grew up in an environment where all I ever saw was whiskey and bourbon really being a spirit that was reserved for men. And it wasn't until a few years ago when I was visiting some distilleries with a friend of mine back home in Kentucky that I started to really see the art and the craft and how whiskey and bourbon is made. And I became really fascinated by it. And so I started doing all of this research and started to learn how vital women's roles have been in the creation of alcohol since the beginning of time, even more so with whiskey and bourbon. It really felt like women have just been buried throughout the ages. And I wanted to try and change that. So I started developing this film called The Spirit of Women. And it's about the trailblazing women in the world of whiskey and bourbon that are really paving the way for females in this very male-dominated industry. I'm really excited to update that we were able to raise enough funds the past couple months through this public campaign and through very generous distilleries. One of them that I really want to spotlight, their name is Forbidden, and they are going to be having a new release that will come out, I believe, at the end of March. And they were one of our very first supporters. And we have a few other distilleries who have donated to our film as well so that we can tell this very, very important story. And I'm so excited to share that we had enough funding that we were able to start the first stage of filming. And we filmed in Kentucky, and then we flew back to Los Angeles, and we filmed here in Los Angeles as well. We filmed at the Log Still Distillery with Lynn Dant, who is one of the head master distillers over there. So it was really exciting to get to film with her. We also filmed with Peggy No Stevens, who I like to call the OG, because this woman is a trailblazing legend. I mean, if you like whiskey and bourbon, you have got to know Peggy No Stevens. She has made such an impact within this industry, not only for women, but also bringing men to the table to open their eyes to be able to be more, inclusive in this industry and to show the blind spots and to show where we need help. She is the very first bourbon master taster in the world. And then we also got to sit down with Marianne Eves. Oh my gosh, an absolute legend. She is the very first master distiller in Kentucky since Prohibition. She has a lot of stories to share professionally and what her journey has been like. And then we also got to film with 2 of the women from Uncle Nearest, Catherine Jerkins and Lucia Creed. First of all, they are amazing together. I could watch them all day long. To get to sit with these 2 women, Kate and Lucia, and get to hear about their experience and overcoming obstacles and perseverance and working with all women on their executive team, and Fawn Weaver being the very first female African-American CEO of any major spirit brand in the United States, and maybe even in the world. I'm not sure about the world, but I definitely know in the United States. That's incredibly inspiring. These are the women that we've already been able to film with. And my co-director, Sarah, and I are starting to go ahead and edit this footage together. And our next phase, we're going to be sitting down with Victoria Butler, who is the great-great-granddaughter of Nearest Green. And she is also the very first African-American female master blender in the world. And we also got to sit down with a really cool distillery called Jeff the Creed. And they are actually the first distillery to open in Shelbyville, Kentucky since Prohibition. But what really stands them out is they are owned by a mother and daughter. We are right now raising funds again so that we can go into stage 2, getting to go to Tennessee and getting to go back to Kentucky to film with a few more women in Kentucky, as well as in Tennessee with Victoria Butler. So we would love to have you follow us. You can share this story. You can donate. However you are capable of being part of this movement with us, we would encourage you to join us and follow along and support us. And one thing that I did forget to mention is after we have filmed in Kentucky and Tennessee, we are going to film in Scotland.
Whisky Sisters!
There's also been a few new bottle launches recently, such as Waterford Distillery launching Cuvée Argot, which is the distillery's first permanent global bottling.
Very good, exciting stuff for them. And Highland Park released its oldest whisky to date, a 50-year-old single malt. No, it's 54, not even 50. As if that isn't enough, it's 54 years old. And the release consists of a bespoke embossed bottle containing the whisky, a presentation box crafted from Scottish oak wood, and an invitation for the buyer to attend a once-in-a-lifetime experience in Orkney. How epic is that?
I think it was like £39,000 or something like that. So you would expect like a proper tour of the Orkney and all that, wouldn't you?
Treated like a Viking king.
Yeah. But yeah, the bottle doesn't look too bad. But I just think, like, what do you do with the block of wood that comes with it? Firewood. And they've been busy at the Loch Lomond Distillery as well. The distillery has released 2 new bottles, Loch Lomond Single Grain Distiller's Choice and Loch Lomond Single Grain Cooper's Collection Mizunara Cask Finish.
Ooh, not heard of that before. Also, Glenmorangie launched a 12-year-old limited Amontillado sherry cask finish bottling. While I was reading this online, I discovered a fact about the infamous Dr. Bill. Amontillado is his favourite style of sherry.
I know. I like we're like decoding Dr. Pill with
Profiling him.
Yeah, exactly.
So that our stalking game, that we can get better at it because we still haven't found him.
Exactly. Also, just the one last thing I saw, this is kind of not whiskey related, but there was an influencer guy who got paid $250,000 to get a tattoo of a vodka bottle on his arm, like a specific brand. I just thought I'll mention it and put it in the universe if any whiskey brand or Glencairn is interested of us getting a tattoo of their product. You know, with enough money, we would definitely do it.
Hit us up with your big dollar offers and we'll get under the tattoo needle for sure.
Worldwide Whiskies with the Whisky Sisters.
Today's episode is all about Welsh whisky, and we are joined with Sean Williams, who is a writer from Wales and the creator of Whisky Wales podcast.
Yeah, so I'm glad we're getting some help, as I hardly know anything about Welsh whiskey apart from like Penderyn. But to be honest, I don't actually know anything about Penderyn either. I just know that it's Welsh. It's a Welsh distillery. It's like the only one I know. But have you actually sampled any Welsh whiskey before this episode?
No, none before this episode, although I was kindly gifted with a bottle of Penderyn whisky that I've still to open at New Year just this year. So yeah, that was very kind. So looking forward to opening that.
Yeah, I've only tried once through Scotch Malt Whisky Society, but like other than that, I haven't tried anything. So this is all new for us. Let's bring Sean to help us out.
Sean Williams.
So welcome to Whisky Sisters podcast, Sean.
Thank you for having me.
We're so glad you're here. So before we start talking about Welsh whiskey, by the way, I have to warn that I really struggle when I say Welsh and Wales. I like just stumble with my words, so just forgive me. But before we start talking about the whiskey in detail, perhaps you would like to tell us a little bit more about your whiskey journey and about your podcast, Whiskey Wales.
Yeah, so I suppose like most people, I started my whiskey journey, I would say badly, Friday nights with very cheap spirits normally. I grew up in a place called Swansea, which is in South Wales, which is the kind of second largest city. It's pretty known for its lively nightlife. There's some big universities there, and yeah, I had a misspent youth, shall we say. So I think after that, my real journey with whiskey actually did start with Penderyn. And I'm not just saying that because I wasn't a Scotch drinker, other than some cheap blends. You know, someone bought me a bottle of Penderyn when I was in my early 20s, and they said, you know, these are up the road, and they were about half an hour away from where I was living at the time. And and it was really good. And it kind of encouraged me to continue. And at that point, it was just Penderyn. They were the only Welsh whiskey, so obviously I started to try different Scotches. Now I definitely am primarily a Scotch drinker. There's always a bottle of bourbon on the bar, and there's always a bottle of Welsh whiskey, or two or three since I've been doing the show. But yeah, I am a Scotch drinker, primarily. And like you guys, I'm just trying to explore the wonderful world of whiskey and try different things. And I'm trying to try a bottle from each of the distilleries in Scotland, which is definitely taking me longer than it was in Wales. I've already done that. So
I know. It doesn't help that there's constantly new distilleries popping up. No. So
well, it's good. I mean, it's a hobby that will never end, isn't it?
That's it.
Exactly.
Never ending good times. That's amazing that, your whiskey journey, talking about when there was only one, and perhaps your journey developing as, as Welsh whiskey. So could you tell our listeners a little bit about the kind of history of whiskey in Wales?
Of course. So not a lot of people know, but it's had quite an impact on whiskey as a whole. I mean, that it was sporadically mentioned throughout history. There are some reports of as early as the 1400s of monks on Bardsey Island, which is a very small island, not too far from me actually, in North Wales now. But there are no confirmed reports. So we can say, without shadow of a doubt, first recorded operational distillery was in Dale in Pembrokeshire, and was started by Evan Williams and his family, basically, in about 1705. Now, Evan Williams, actually, after the kind of limited commercial success of that distillery in Wales, and the kind of start of the kind of anti-drinking in Wales and things like that, and different historic things of the time, he actually moved to the States with his family and started Evan Williams Distillery Bourbon. And
wow.
Allegedly, the distillery themselves is still today. You can still try Evan Williams bourbon, but they claim to be the first Kentucky bourbon distillery, the first one that was there. And also there are a lot of this Jack Daniel, everyone knows Jack Daniels. There's a lot of stories about Welsh distillers working in Jack Daniels as well in the early days. So it's definitely had a profound effect, I think, but more than we kind of tell people. So then in about 1889 was the last distillery in Wales before the modern distilleries as we know them. So about over 100 years ago, in a place called Bala, and it's Frongoch Distillery. It was very much, unfortunately, viewed as a bit of a like a fad, not like Scotch. It wasn't taken seriously, really. Although the whiskey was reportedly very good, it was a peated whiskey, and I think they used sherry casks as well. It was reportedly a good whiskey. It just wasn't taken seriously. It did have a royal seal as well, so their bottling was called Royal Welsh, but unfortunately limited commercial success, even though they spent at the time millions in today's money, as you would a modern distillery. They built train stations, they built offices there, they built staff accommodation, the distillery itself. So it's a big operation. But unfortunately, 1901, that was the end of whiskey production in Wales, and until the new millennium. So then we come right up to date, basically.
Almost sounds like someone should just rebuild that distillery in the same
I know.
location.
I know. I
And-
don't think the farmers would be very happy at the minute if they
But
did.
just like the peated sherry with the Onlo train station. Oh my God, sounds amazing.
Yeah,
I
think it
know,
would-
that's such a shame. It just sounds like a huge effort for it to have bombed in that way or not have been given, you know, the credit it was due. It just shows you, doesn't it?
It was definitely, you know, I think if it would have opened in modern times, I think it would have been a massive success. But obviously back then, there was also the temperance movement in Wales, which I don't know if you're aware of it. You know, it was kind of a bit like they had in the States with the prohibition, but it was very much, you know, the evil spirit and don't drink, and you know, a lot of Welsh women taking revenge on their men. So rightly so, they should have at the time because they were treated badly. But they decided to target that to really make their lives not worth living. But that all basically, you know, kind of was in their downfall, really, and that stopped any whiskey production in Wales for 100 years.
So you would think that maybe they used to have like an illicit whiskey making.
You would think, but no. I mean, I'm sure there was. I have heard modern day stories of illicit distilling, but not for whiskey. And unfortunately, there's nothing unlike, you know, the fantastic history of Scotch and the excise men and you know, the Highland and Lowland. Unfortunately, we haven't got quite the same kind of checkered past, as it were. But yeah, it's still an interesting story, and it's definitely, I think, I know Penderyn like to use this in their marketing. They call us the secret Celtic nation, you know, because we don't like to shout too much about what we're doing, and we try and keep it very quiet and very hush-hush, you know, which is probably to our downfall a lot of the time, especially when it comes to business. But luckily, modern day marketing, they've realized they really need to shout about the products a bit more.
Exactly.
Not keep it to themselves.
Stay cool and mysterious, but kind of put ourselves out there at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Like any good speed dating session, I'd imagine. Not that I've done it, but I'd imagine.
So there is 6 new distilleries now then in Wales. Could you tell us a little bit more about these?
Yeah, so back in the 90s, late 90s, basically there was a move to open a Welsh whisky distillery. Now, unfortunately, they had government funding and they bought a still. They bought basically a column still, which is the one that Penderyn used now. But it was a bluff. So it was a prop for HMRC, and they were buying in Scotch whiskey and bottling up as Welsh whiskey and using this still as a prop.
Cheeky.
And an expensive prop as well, several £100,000 worth of prop. So after a few years, they did get found out, you know, like they got rumbled and closed down. So that unfortunately did a lot of damage to Welsh whisky as a brand, you know, and it was a bit of in a poor state then. Fortunately, the guys that originally founded Penderyn, they were sitting in the Glenconnon in Hyrwine, which is just down the road from the distillery, some of the founding members, talking about entrepreneurship and things like that, and saying like, oh, we've got this still sitting up here, you know, we could actually make Welsh whisky, you know, why is no one doing it? So they did. So they started the distillery and they started it on a shoestring and soon ran out of money. But fortunately, they had investment from business within Wales, which is nice. It's not owned by, you know, a hedge fund or some big conglomerate.
That's nice.
You know, it's a Welsh businessman came in, put the money in, put some members of the team in and some infrastructure. And then, you know, they started to become commercially viable then and started to produce more numbers. In about 2000, they launched their bottlings, and obviously Penderyn. Now, if you don't know anything about Welsh whisky, I think you'll know the name Penderyn because they have been around for the longest. You know, they've been around over 20 years. They were heavily influenced by Dr. Jim Swan, who's quite famous, Scottish professor, unfortunately not with us anymore. And he really helped them develop the signature style that is their Madeira finish, which is, you know, that's always been their signature style bourbon and then finished in a Madeira cask. So after Penderyn, basically, you couldn't really call it an industry, could you? Because there's one distillery. But luckily then, a company in West Wales that own an organic cheese factory called Dà Mhìle. So I know to your listeners, if you're writing this up, it will be Dà Mhìle, but it's said Dà Mhìle. So it's Scots Gaelic for the word 2000. And it was basically released, their original bottling in the year 2000, but their original bottling was Scotch and it was advertised as such. So they went to they went to one of the distilleries, can't remember off the top of my head now, in Scotland, and I think it was Loch Lomond, actually. They went to Loch Lomond Distillery and commissioned them to do the first organic Scotch whiskey. And obviously it was a big success. The bottlings were limited. But after that, then they bought out a Welsh, they bought a still and they bought out a Welsh organic whiskey and then a Welsh single grain whiskey. So they were the second. And then, you know, it was quite quiet for a while. And now within the last decade, we've had this big, well, in Wales term anyway, we've had this big kind of resurgence again of new distilleries. So we've got Aberfoyle's distillery in North Wales, which is owned by Whitney Neal. So they've got big backing, obviously, and they put a lot of money. Distillery. They're producing whiskey. Their first bottlings came out, I think, last year. Quite nice, young whiskey, obviously, but it's still, you know, it's very good. And then there is the Coles Distillery back down in South Wales, which is a very small enterprise craft distillery. We would definitely call them a craft distillery. There's also In the Welsh Wind, which is another craft distiller, gins, vodkas. They have got in cask at the minute, their new make spirit. Unfortunately, it's not ready yet. That's how new they are. But, you know, it's looking good. I've tasted their new make. I've tasted some cask dips and some force aged. And yeah, it's very nice. And unlike any of the other Welsh distilleries, they're actually using green grain from Wales, from the fields next to them. So they're not drying the barley. So it definitely adds a very different flavour profile.
Quick question. You know, when earlier you were talking about Penderyn, you said they aged the bourbon in a Madeira cask.
No, sorry, they aged in a bourbon cask. So
in a bourbon cask. I was getting
what?
Sorry. Getting confused.
Sorry, it's been a long day. No, so their signature style is aged in a bourbon cask. Originally, it was Buffalo Trace. Now they're kind of mixing it up a bit because Buffalo Trace has become a bit harder to get hold of.
Yeah.
But then it's finished in a Madeira cask, basically. Yeah. So it's aged in a bourbon cask and then finished in a Madeira cask.
One more question. So with the Dà Mhìle as well, so they were doing organic with Loch Lomond, but now they're still organic. Am I right?
They are solely organic. So they're the only distillery in Wales and one of the only ones in the UK that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm sure there are others, and I'm sure people will say, but as far as I'm aware, they're definitely the only one in Wales that do solely organic spirits. Full stop. They do rum. They do a lot of things. You know, a lot of small bottlings, but it's very good. It is very good, and their whiskey has remained so. Their single grain and their single malt remains solely organic as well, and they are now trying to move to locally produced grains, so they're not just importing them in as well, which is again nice to see because we can grow barley in Wales. It is a damp climate. You know, you look at Scotland and it's pretty dry compared to Scotland. So we should be able to grow it in theory, but you know, it's not the industry norm because obviously logistics. But yeah, it's definitely nice to see them moving over to that. Again, very small bottlings they offer. You know, their runs are maybe 200-300 bottles at a time because the size of the still. But it's very good whiskey. You know, regardless of the fact it's Welsh whiskey, I would definitely put it up there against any whiskey. It is a good whiskey.
And on that note, Sean, how would you say that Welsh whiskey generally differs from Scotch? Maybe that's too difficult a question, or are there any clear differences evident between them?
No, I think so. I mean, definitely Scotch has set the path for world whiskey, hasn't it? I mean, it's been around for so long, you know, but it's got clear guidelines. So what you can do with Scotch is very restricted. However, what you can do with Welsh whiskey, we haven't really got that restriction. So other than the fact it has to be in cask for 3 years and 1 day, we can do whatever we like with it. We don't have to put it in a bourbon cask. We can put it straight into a fortified wine cask straight away. No finishing to age, you know. If you want to put it in a tequila cask, not a problem. You know, you can do whatever you want with it, which does mean there's a lot of experimentation in Welsh whiskey. You know, there's a lot of bottlings that are coming out that you just wouldn't see, I think, in other areas, in other whiskies. And also, obviously, because there's no blueprint on what we need to do, it definitely encourages a bit more entrepreneurialism and a bit more, you know, small scale, because you can have a craft distillery. You don't need to invest millions to open a distillery in Wales. The smallest whiskey distillery in Wales that I haven't covered yet is the Anglesey Distillery at Ynys Môn. I mean, very, very small scale. It's part of a farming business. I think I sent you guys one of the bottles. I mean, they're hand drawn on with the batch number. They got lovely labels, but it's batch number 7. They're very small scale. But again, they're producing really good quality spirits. So I don't think that should be necessarily held against them at the same time.
It sounds quite an exciting time for whisky in Wales, with a lot of creativity. We would love to know how you feel that it's received, what the whisky culture's like in Wales. Do you find that people kind of generally enjoy it, or are there specialist whisky bars, for example?
Yeah, so I think we're definitely lacking in the whisky bars. There are a good selection of bars in Wales. We love a drink, the Welsh, especially if the rugby's on. We love being down the pub. And since, Welsh whisky has come to the forefront, obviously a lot of good bars that have a good spirit or good whiskey selection are definitely pushing the Welsh whiskies now. As for the culture of Welsh whiskey, I think definitely anyway in the UK, since obviously COVID and lockdown, I think that had a huge impact on the whiskey industry, but definitely for consumption, it was a good thing, I think, personally, because people are sitting at home and, it was an easy kind of thing to do let's see what, I've always been into my spirits. Let's see what this whiskey's like, what that whiskey's like. So I think that's worked in its favour as well. And people in Wales have definitely embraced, I think, it as an industry now. I mean, Penderyn have been around for 20 years, so they're very much known within the country. They themselves, want to be, the kind of Guinness or the Jamesons of Wales. If you go to Wales, they want you to go and see a rugby game, maybe go and see a castle and have a glass of Penderyn, because that's how kind of they are intrinsic with the country and the brand. But I definitely think as Welsh whisky grows past that, there's a lot of distilleries now. I really think it can be something that we're maybe not known for like other countries in the same way, but definitely is something that if you're in South Wales, if you're in West Wales, if you're in North Wales, you're like, oh yes, there's a distillery there. I definitely want to go and try that because I've heard Welsh whisky is really good, and definitely want that.
So can you actually go and visit any of these distilleries yet?
You can visit all of them, with the exception of the one on Anglesey, which you should be able to visit by the end of this year. They're spending some money on like a cafe and kind of visitors area, but they are very small scale there. So, but yeah, the other 5 distilleries, Penderyn have actually got a site now in Llandudno in North Wales to produce a purely peated whiskey. It's not too far either from the Aberfoyle's distillery, so it's really good if you're in that kind of area. You can two at the same time. And then in South Wales, obviously you can visit Penderyn, you can visit the Coles distillery. It's quite a small distillery, but they own it in connection with their pub, the White Hart Inn in Llandarog, which is an amazing building to visit. It's an old 700-year-old pub with a thatched roof. Like, you don't see pubs like that anymore. It's just all the kind of like Toby jugs and the open fire, and it's a really good, cool place to visit. And then in the Welsh Wind, they've got quite a nice distillery to visit. They do kind of gin tasting and workshops and things like that. So yeah, they're all open for the public now and happy to receive visitors. If people come to Wales, I would urge them to go there. I've visited all of the distilleries. I've stayed in the areas. Some of them I've been to before, obviously, because I live in North Wales and I'm from South Wales, so it's been quite easy, and I've got family in the area and things. But there's a lot to see in the area as well as the distilleries.
Definitely.
As well.
What's your favorite Welsh whiskey, if you can name 1 or 2? So if you were to recommend to our listeners.
Yeah, so I think that obviously everyone's got to say this. They're all good, obviously, but I have favourites. I definitely have favourites. If you can get hold of Dà Mhìle's, either their single malt or their single grain, I do think they do something really special there. I mean, they're normally 1 or 2 casks, so it's small scale, and it's the time they take to produce the whiskey as well. They leave it sit in cask for a bit longer. They're up to about sort of 8-9 years now as well. So it's not an age statement, but it is fantastic whiskey. I'd put it next to any other whiskey as good. And then I would definitely, although they're new and I think your listeners may struggle to get hold of it, I would recommend the Anglesey one. It's actually what I'm sipping tonight because I like bourbon, obviously, as well as whiskey. And I'd say it's the closest of the Welsh whiskies to almost like a bourbon. It's very vanilla-y. It's only been aged in a bourbon cask, but their spring on site is through a glacial, a historic glacial lake that's not there anymore. And the softness of their water, they actually sell the Anglesey spring water, is incredible. I mean, people like Leigha Fire have really kind of got on that, you know, that water with whiskey is important.
Sure.
There are arguments for and against, but there's something about the mouthfeel and the softness of it. And considering, again, it's non-age statement and it's quite new, you know, it's 4 or 5 years old, you know, it tastes like some bourbons I've had that have been like a 7-8 year old bourbon, you know, and it's really good, really good stuff.
Yeah, you're definitely selling it, like piqued my interest for sure.
Definitely.
And with the Dà Mhìle, thank you so much, by the way, for sending us the samples. And the single malt will be the one that we will review in a minute. But
Fantastic.
I'm actually sipping the single grain today.
What do you think?
It's really nice. It's really nice.
Good,
I'm not
right?
massive, like, I don't drink too many single grains. But on the nose, it's amazing, like sweet whipped cream and vanilla and cooked peaches, and it's beautiful. And then on the palate, that touch of peat, and it's really, really nice.
Good, yeah. I mean, single grain is misunderstood, I think, a bit. And if you explain to it, people like it's basically our version of bourbon, you know, a mix of grains. It kind of makes more sense to them, you know. But no, it's definitely, they're good bottlings, and I hope you enjoy the single malt because I think it's special. I definitely think it's really special.
Yeah, now I'm excited really to try the single malt even more because this one is very nice.
So the peated Penderyn, at the minute, it's actually a bourbon cask aged, and then it's finished in a Lafroig peated whiskey cask.
Ooh.
So it's not actually peated barley that's gone into it, but you definitely it's campfire smoke.
Looking forward to them. Sean, we can't let you go without asking you about your dream dram. As you may well know, that question is about which famous person, dead or alive, would you share a whiskey with, and what dram would you pick?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this, and I kind of, some of your other guests, someone said Oliver Reed the other, I think a few weeks ago. I thought that was fantastic, and I was like, that
would be a rowdy night for Swansea.
It would be brilliant. So I've gone for Richard Burton.
Cool.
He grew up in South Wales, not too far from where I used to live.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he grew up in the Neath Valleys, not far from where I have family now. You know, he liked to drink. I think his reputation, you know, is there. And another Welshman, so Richard Burton, and I think it would have to be with Dà Mhìle single malt, because I think that's kind of at the minute the best offering that we have so I would drink that with him. It'd be a lively night,
choice. I think so, and all the stories that could be told.
Before we let you go, you are writing a book about Welsh whiskey. Am I right?
I am, yeah.
That? So this is your chance to give it a little plug.
Yeah, so obviously the podcast Whisky Wales, we're visiting all the distilleries in Wales, and then we're going to be doing kind of bottle releases and things like that as well in the future. Tastings, not offering our own bottlings, obviously. It would be nice, but and then the book, hopefully, I'm in the middle of writing it, about halfway through, will hopefully be finished by the summer, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, will be available for Christmas this year. That's the plan anyway, but I probably have egg on my face now because it probably won't be in it next year. But stay tuned, and obviously I'm on Instagram and all that stuff anyway, so you can stay tuned and see what's going on.
Absolutely, and we'll check the links in our show notes.
Fantastic. Diolch yn fawr iawn for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yaki da.
Yaki da.
That's all I can say. That's
Well, when you do your Dram On Fire, that is basically skål or cheers or slanger. You know, that's it's good health in Welsh. So you'll have to, and the pronunciation is good actually as well. It's good. So
why, thank you.
Put that in there.
If you want to listen to Sean's Whisky Wales podcast, it is out every second Sunday every month, and this month's episode is actually about Dà Mhìle, which was his favorite whiskey, so make sure to tune in.
Cool. I've listened to an episode and I really enjoyed it.
Dram On Fire.
So talking about Dà Mhìle, this is our first Dram On Fire of the day. So it's Dà Mhìle single malt, and they actually started as a gin producer, and many may be familiar with the delicious seaweed gin. I love it, and the martini is really, really good gin if you like savory gin, so definitely try it. So maturation took place in first fill Madeira casks, and it was bottled at 46% ABV, and we like that, don't we?
We do.
This is a limited edition single cask bottling. One thing though I saw on the website, which I didn't like, I have to be honest, it says that it's a very limited edition, so highly collectible. It's like, come on, you should want people to drink your whiskey and not like collect it and,
Slurp it up.
Yeah, we want people to know how it is. People need to try it. Don't collect stuff. Come on.
No bottle flipping here.
The distillery also has a single grain whiskey, which was part aged in Lafroy casks. Yeah, it was nice, wasn't it? Oh, you don't know. You haven't tried it yet.
I haven't tried that one yet. But yeah, no, you seem to be really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So
the color was kind of light goldeny.
Yeah, definitely. I've got that light golden. I think it's a beautiful nose. Lots of nice fruits for me. Apple, pear, fresh cherries, like honeydew, melon, honey, sweetness.
It's very delicate nose. Reminded me of white wine.
But then, okay.
After nosing it a while, I think like there's something funky in there, like underneath. It made me think kind of like a mushroomy or cheesy or truffle or something. And it actually reminded me of the Glen Scotia 15.
Okay. I remember that kind of like funky earthiness coming through on that. I'm not detecting that just yet. However, I feel it's sat in the glass for a little while and almost like there is like more layers being revealed the longer the air gets in.
There's definitely a little bit of fruitiness, but I'm still thinking the white wine.
I really like it on the nose.
Yeah, me too. I do actually always really enjoy those weird, funky notes. Mushroom cheese with white wine. Sign me up.
And how did you find it on the palate?
So I was getting some warming spice. I was thinking maybe some white pepper tingle there's going on. Not like overpowering, just nice little gentle. Maybe some nutmeg. I don't know. There was something citrusy, but I don't think it was like citrus. I couldn't really think what the word was.
I really loved it on the palate. I kind of found it like kind of sweet pastry, but like the kind of pastry crust if you were having like a fruit pie or tart. I still was getting apple, but maybe more cooked apple. Slight warming spice for me was a wee bit cinnamon-like, but not super cinnamony.
You know what? Just to stop you for a second, I've had this in the glass for quite a while, and now going back, I'm getting everything you just said. Apple pie, cinnamon, and really nice kind of mouthfeel.
Lovely mouthfeel, like a really nice balance in the mouth.
Yeah, and I feel like it's very mouth coating. Like it really gets your whole tongue and everything. Yeah, go on. What else did you get?
And I guess that was the kind of, I didn't get anything else on the palate, but quite strong and definite for the notes I got.
I think definitely helped to leave it in the glass for a bit longer.
I really enjoyed the finish on it as well. I kind of wrote it feels good, like smooth, rolling, balanced, and like just baked fruit pie and slightly oaky and feel good hug in a glass, but not necessarily a winter hug, an all year round hug. I was really loving it.
Yeah, I was getting oaky, woody on the finish as well, but now I'm also thinking that those kind of weird mushroomy aromas are transferring into the palate as well in a way.
Wow, tell me more.
Like it's a bit, I don't know what is the word with all that, like earthy. No, it's not really earthy, is it? It's kind of, but it's really nice. Forest. I know, not forest either. I don't know. Like just imagine mushroom
like
and
those
cheese
those fancy mushrooms, like the wee kind of like fancy dark ones or curly ones.
Yeah, and it's maybe more like mushroom sauce, or mushroom soup, that kind of flavor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, cool. Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was definitely, I can see why Sean really likes this one.
Definitely.
So people don't collect it, drink it.
Yes, crack open your bottles. It is delish. Next up is the multi-award winning Penderyn, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, that sounds,
Penderyn Madeira finish. This is the original Penderyn house style, aged in ex-bourbon barrels and finished in ex-Madeira wine casks to bring out its full gold character. And it is also bottled at a fully respectable 46% ABV. Light in colour again, isn't it, Inka?
Very light. I would thinking like straw and the sun.
Yeah, nice. I've got light straw, super light.
Okay, I wasn't as excited about this one. The nose was so sweet. Like
Yeah.
sweet bubble gum, maybe some like plum bubble gummy thing. And then after a while, I was thinking, Magnum white chocolate ice cream, like
Oh, yeah.
so they have the Madagascar vanilla ice cream
Oh,
inside,
yeah,
but then
yeah.
coated with the white chocolate layer. So all that.
Yeah.
But like in that intense sweet way.
Totally with you there. Although at first I've written blossom trees, which I don't know if they smell, but I was thinking of them. I've got candied sweetness, so totally with you on that quite sugary sweetness. I was thinking, those stalls at the market and it's got all these candies and big huge tube of gummy stuff and they've got big melting candy and all that, just this waft of sugar candy. I kind of got that. And I also got, interesting again, you say plum, because I've got ripe plum flesh on the nose.
There's a Finnish sweet called kettu, which means fox, and it's like a
Is it
weird one.
chewy or
It's kind of
crunchy?
soft. It's soft, but it's covered with sugar. But I'm just trying to figure out what the flavor is.
It's got an artificial sweetness smell to
Yeah,
me.
exactly. That's the thing. I did write down like fake raspberry, but I don't think it's raspberry. It's more like something else.
Although I love sweetness in life, I don't particularly enjoy that more kind of manufactured sweetness aroma on the nose.
Yeah, call it marmalade. It's like a marmalade, but it's not like spreadable. It's like a soft kind of
Ah,
sweet. Anyway, oh, it's the berry of those trees that the little red berries.
like a cranberry?
No, it's like the ones with if birds eat them, they get drunk.
Oh, yeah, they kind of poison them.
Yeah, rowan berry. Is that the same? Is
Oh,
that the same, or am I thinking something else?
I'm not that up on my berries, Inka.
Anyway, rowan berry. The sweets are made from rowan berry, and they're really, really sweet, covered in sugar, and so anyway, smells like that.
I definitely want a sweetie haul next time you're in Finland so I can get used to these awesome flavoured sweets that you described.
I know. Well, I'm going in July, so I'm already I've got plans to buy you a couple of bits and bobs.
Hook me up with some candies.
So how about the palate then?
Aniseedy, baked fennel, biscuity, some peaches and cream. Not that pleasant for me.
Oh my god, I didn't even that sounds better than mine. I was thinking sweet blackberries, but again like that kind of fake fruit one.
Okay.
First there was a bit like that alcoholic, fumey, acidic something going on. I was trying really hard to figure out what am I tasting because it's very unusual. It's so sweet. Mixed berry jam or like a concentrate that you make,
Okay.
like cordial or something.
Yeah.
And then maybe something a bit more tropical like lychees or cantaloupe or no, which one is sweeter? The honeydew melon, isn't it sweeter than cantaloupe? That
I
one.
think honeydew can be sweeter, yeah.
Yeah, very fruity sweet.
And the finish, I found it kind of, my mouth felt a bit kind of drying on the finish, mildly woody, maybe peachy, but I was struggling for descriptives for it. And I wasn't enjoying the mouthfeel as much. Sorry, Penderyn. But I had this other one first, which was all giving me juicy and deliciousness. And I think maybe that's not done this one any favours for me because I then tried this after and comparatively was like,
Yeah. Exactly. I think the mouthfeel and the other one was much more complex and it was definitely giving layers and loads more. But I can definitely tell now because when I go to Small Whisky Society and I try the whiskies, I literally never ask which distillery it is. I just try the whiskey unless I want something that maybe reminds me of that distillery. But it definitely then was Penderyn, the one that I tried because it was so sweet and it was giving me all the cordial like Ribena vibes.
Ah, interesting.
That's a no for me, but if you really, really like sweet and fruity whiskies, then
Yeah.
it's a must try for sure.
And let's finish off with Penderyn Peated Expression. The peat comes solely from the casks the spirit has been matured in. Again, bottled at 46% ABV, this whisky also has a kosher certificate.
This is even lighter color than the before. It's very light straw and almost like green yellowy straw,
Yeah, that's true. I got bored with the paleness by the third dram and I just wrote pale.
Yeah, they're all very pale, aren't they?
I can't get any smokiness on the nose of this at all.
No, it doesn't transfer to the nose. It's quite sweet again on the nose, but not in that same kind of intense way. It's nicer.
I found it kind of maybe gooey banana bread sweetness and a little bit of grassiness.
Oh, that's funny. I had bananas on the palate, so caramel biscuits or the digestive biscuits, but they've also done the kind of toffee or caramel coated ones.
Yeah, they've gone for the high octane ones, haven't they?
Yeah, so that's what I'm getting.
I'm finding it even sweeter with more air in it on the nose, but again, I'm kind of struggling for anything other than what I've already said.
It's actually quite nice on the nose. Like it's sweet, but it's not so. I guess I just struggle with like sweet fruity notes, and I'm much better with when it's caramel or toffee or.
Yeah, and you mentioned banana notes on the palate. What all did you get on the palate for this one?
You could detect the peat on your tongue. Is that kind of tingling going around? It's definitely the peat is doing this trick. I was getting sweet orchard fruits, mainly like pears and apples. And then, banana and also some caramel.
Ah, okay. At first I got the kind of like slightly salted as in saltwater seaweed. And I was thinking of that big flat seaweed. And I kind of got a sweet bread roll. It's not a sweet thing, but how some breads can just be a little bit sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got sour apple and a little bit of white pepper spice.
Yeah. I think the peat is kind of giving you the spicy feeling, but I can totally get that seaweed. It's like kind of salty water, like sometimes you swim in the sea and you get a little bit of water in your mouth.
Yeah, and you get that kind of vibe. Yeah, I got that.
Vibes, Scottish beach vibes, or Welsh.
Yes,
Welsh.
but that kind of Celtic beach as opposed to your Mediterranean beach. And what about the finish?
It's quite short, I think. Or when I took the sip, I feel like there's quite a lot like to explore. But I don't have enough time to explore it, and it all kind of goes away.
Ah, that is such a good shout. I felt I was kind of struggling on the finish, and I kind of feel I was guessing what the finish was, and that makes sense because I've just kind of like written baked apple and a bit woody.
Oaky and dry, something sweeter there as well. But I mean, like in general as well, with the whole tasting experience, like you take the mouthful and go, oh, actually, I quite like it. But then, it goes away so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to I end up like sipping much faster because I want to keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But I actually like this one. I did like this one, but I just wish that it would be like a bit more long lasting.
Mm-hmm. I think I maybe preferred it to the other one, which surprises me. On paper, I would have imagined I would have preferred the first. But it sounds like a clear winner for us both is Dà Mhìle.
Yeah. I think there's definitely much more complexity in that dram. It's funny though, because when I first started trying and sampling it, I'm like, I'm not really getting too much, but I think definitely the air helps.
There's so many Penderyn releases now. I'm still keen to try some more and crack open the bottle I got in New Year. It's a kind of special release one. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. That's the thing.
I got quite a few samples as well, and obviously we got the sherrywood, and then there was someone else sent us. Adrian from
Whiskey Mastery.
Yeah, send us a few samples, but I haven't had a chance to try them yet. So
let's see. Let's watch this space.
Whisky Sisters Whisky Fact.
So today's fact is fairly simple, but perhaps many may not be aware of the fact that most distilleries store casks of whiskey belonging to other distilleries in their warehouses. This way, if in case of a fire or any kind of catastrophe, they won't lose their stock. So that's pretty clever.
Very clever.
You've been listening to the Whisky Sisters podcast.
And as the day of release is International Women's Day, make sure to revisit one of our first episodes about the history of women in distilling, episode 7. And this episode celebrates women in whisky from the alchemical origins of distillation to modern day experts in the industry. We navigate our way through some of the epic stories of truly inspirational whisky wonder women. So definitely check it out if you haven't already and let us know your thoughts.
And drum roll. Guess what, listeners? Next week will be the final episode of season 2.
Gasp! Whoa!
We are taking a well-earned break for a few weeks.
We need to recharge our whiskey batteries, don't we, Inka, and get up to some mischief in our non-whiskey related lives.
I know, exactly. Lots is going on behind the scenes.
Yes.
It feels like it has become a thing that when we end a season or go on a break, we always have artwork at our hands.
Yes, we do.
So next week will be no different, and we have artwork for review for next week also.
And there will be another dram too, but you'll just have to wait and see. But while you wait, feel free to listen to our previous episodes and make sure you follow us on Instagram at whiskysisters.podcast, Twitter at Whisky Sisters, and good old-fashioned Facebook. I'm sure some people are still on Facebook. I'm not sure who, but if you are, we are Whisky Sisters Podcast on there.
Have a nice evening, you Wonder Woman.
You too, Sugar. Have a great week. Looking forward to our season finale next week. And I think we've mentioned women so much this episode, which is cool and everything, but we're loving everybody. And so just a big see you next time to our listeners.
May your glass be full.
And your dram on fire.